Um, hey everyone, thank you for joining the Left Hook. I am with investigative journalist Roger Sonberger. He is formerly of the Daily Beast, award-winning investigative reporter, and now he's independent, which means he can write without fear or favor. He's from Austin, Texas, and I've been following him, and he's like, "Hey everyone, I think there's really big news. Hey everybody, hey everyone, big news here." Roger, tell us about what you discovered in the Epstein files.
The big news is that there is a direct accusation that Trump sexually assaulted a minor girl in the 1980s, and that the FBI interviewed this person extensively. And then they flagged this accusation in an internal presentation in DOJ by the FBI, the Task Force of Violent Crimes and the Child Sex Trafficking Task Force. They flagged this in a 21 slide presentation over the summer, this summer.
This summer,
Yeah,
wow.
this summer. So this is I guess 6 years later, right? After this all went down, the interview, they're like, oh yeah, we'll pull this out and we'll put it as a bullet point in a comprehensive presentation that they gave about the Epstein case. It's highly detailed. It lists people who gave proffers. It lists the co-conspirators from the first case, just really detailed, presentation. Then there's this slide that says prominent names, and the first two bullet points are accusations against Donald Trump. The first one is the sexual assault allegation, and it's pretty graphic and disturbing, and it's also a violent assault, right? I mean, the sexual assault is violent, but then after, she, claims that she bit him, and then claims that he punched her in the head and kicked her out. And the FBI quite clearly found this person credible. Now, this does not mean that the accusation is true. It does not mean that they believe the accusation. It does not mean that they think the accusation is chargeable. We don't know, right? We don't know what kind of evidence could have been brought to bear. But this woman was also a Jeff Epstein victim and would have been one of the earliest accusers. And this was in early mid-1980s. She was between 13 and 15 years old, according to the files, right? So she lawyers up after she, gives this tip to the FBI. They go back and forth between her and her legal team, and she gives an interview. She gets Lisa Bloom's law firm to represent her in a case that she sued the Epstein estate, and apparently successfully. She settled. She received a settlement. This has been publicly reported. This is the same person that I've identified. So you have an Epstein victim who apparently successfully sued the Epstein estate over accusations in the early to mid 1980s. And while that was happening, she said one of the people, according to the files, one of the people who assaulted her was Donald Trump.
Yep.
So how do you divorce those two if you're thinking about in terms of credibility here, right? Again, I'm not trying to convince people that hey, this really happened. I do not know. I do not know if the DOJ was able to follow up. It seems like the woman also was afraid of retaliation. Now, in the FBI interview, which is I linked to in my report, in the interview, there's a lot of redacted stuff, right? But her attorney is
I'm
present.
looking at it right now. It's redaction, 1, 2, or date of birth, redaction, was interviewed at law office, redaction, office telephone number, redaction, was born in Binghamton, New York. Everything else redacted, moved to South Carolina with her mother and brothers during approximate last year.
Yeah, and then go to page 2.
Oh, wow.
Right?
First full paragraph redacted.
First 2 blocks.
Second 2 blocks redacted. Then you have the small paragraph. Advised that until recently, blank was the only individual alive to whom blank confided incidents of abuse she endured when she was a child. A mother also knew what happened to blank, but her mother is deceased now. Blank never would have written down what happened to her. She did not keep a formal diary. She did not make any recordings or any kind of incidents. Blank advised she met Jeffrey Epstein when she lived on, all redacted.
Yeah. And I've been able to piece these details together.
Wow.
About her, right? But the further on in the interview, so we don't know what's behind those redactions. And we also don't know what they said in the back and forth between her lawyer and the FBI in advance of this interview, right? But the tip that was called in was the Donald Trump tip. Now, there's another pretty notorious document that, maybe a lot of people watching this might remember. Back in December, that was released, and this was the time when DOJ was like, hey, just so you guys know, we're going to be releasing this stuff that has all these outrageous claims about Donald Trump in them. These claims are often false and they're unverified, and some of them are bizarre. Like, and they are, right? Like a lot of those claims on that slide are just, really wild claims that I do not take at face value, right? And even one of them, the FBI flags on there and it says this was followed up on or whatever. The sources, we've determined this is not credible, right? For one
Yeah.
of those claims. Now, people on someone, I don't know who it was, but like clipped that out of that table, that spreadsheet. And that's been circulating on social media as a rebuttal to what I reported, right?
Oh,
It's
interesting.
from the right. So it's actually like in the favor of my reporting. Because what that says is, well, the FBI said that this one wasn't credible. It's a different accuser,
So
right?
this one is credible.
They
So
pulled it from the same sheet, but it's a different accusation.
there you go.
So, right. So the one I report is at the top of the sheet. They don't say that. They don't say it's not credible. They said that they talked to the caller, they got the identity of the woman, and they prepared to dispatch an agent to the Washington office. The interview took place at the Seattle field office, right?
Wow.
So then there's after this tip and they figure all this out, they get her identity, whatever. They're like, and there's one thing that says like the information warrants a follow-up interview. They actually write that in another memo. Back and forth with the attorneys, they set up this interview. In the interview, the woman at one point, she doesn't seem to really have my read on it is like probably doesn't follow a whole lot of news very closely. And with the first Epstein indictment and the arrest and like that investigation and how it became a sham, obviously, right? That was news at the time, but it wasn't explosive national news the way his 2019 arrest was, right? That boom, right, really exploded. She doesn't seem to have been aware of the first arrest, so she couldn't like put it. She just had told this friend and had told her mother that this guy Jeff has made my life hell, right? He was the
She
person.
didn't put two and two together.
Yeah, and then she said she got a text from her friend, right? Remember her friend called in the tip. She got a text from her friend. The friend called in the tip that was about Epstein and Donald Trump. And she said, my friend sent me this picture. That's how I know it's Jeff, right? And the agents are like, oh, well, you want to show us that picture? And then she's like, I don't know. And there's like crosstalk, and the agents hear the word president, right? They hear the word president come up. And they're like, whoa, what was that? President? And the woman, this is memorialized in 302. Anyone can read this. You could read it right there, and then the woman says, yeah, I don't know. And the attorney answers for her. And the attorney says, my client, advises that she does not want to implicate, I'm paraphrasing here. You
Yes,
could
yeah.
read the quote if you want to, does not want to implicate powerful people out of fear of retaliation. It's not,
You said her attorney
yeah,
answered saying, quote, the lady's name, let's call her Jane Doe. Quote, Jane Doe was concerned about implicating additional individuals and specifically any that were well known due to fear of retaliation.
yeah. And there are obviously a lot of options in front of that attorney to answer that question. One of them would be she doesn't want to implicate an innocent person. But he doesn't say that. He says, and then they crop the photo. They crop Trump out of the photo, and they show the photo of Epstein alone to the agents. They took Epstein. They took a picture of it. The agents did, and that's in the files. I think I linked to it also. You can see the picture and it's the famous picture of Epstein and Trump, and the agents say that in the 302. They say, "Oh, right, this is the widely distributed photograph."
Yeah. Of
Jeffrey
note,
Epstein.
the particular image sent to her was recognized by FBI agents as the widely distributed photograph of Epstein and the current United States President, Donald Trump. The woman's Epstein victimization occurred in the 80s when the caller was approximately 13 to 15 years old, resided in the blank area of South Carolina. The reported victim provided enough preliminary information to warrant a follow-up interview. I just want to add this because you wrote this. This is from Roger's fantastic piece, which I've already shared. I'll share again. This is Roger Sollenberger, independent reporter. These biographical details match the initial tip which notes a criminal history in South Carolina, they also match public reporting about a South Carolina victim who relocated to Vancouver, close to Seattle, who filed a lawsuit against Epstein, receiving a settlement from his estate in 2021.
Yeah. So what you have here is somebody, a woman, who says, apparently credibly enough, that Jeff Epstein's estate settled with her, right? She received a settlement, reportedly, right, in 2021. So despite the lack of hard evidence that she might have, the interview that she gave the FBI is pretty detailed. Again, I can't vouch for what's true here, but I can say, well, it seems the estate thought she had a point.
I mean, why would they settle, right? I mean, even settlement isn't admission of guilt, but
It's
they
not,
settled.
but they settle, right? And again, we don't know. I just know that typically, in my experience reporting, right, in my experience talking with lawyers for countless reports that involve legal issues like this, civil matters like this that settle, typically, not always, but typically you settle and it's okay, it's because something is true here. There's something to the accusations,
I
right?
want to. I mean, this is going to be, folks, just a warning. I'm going to say read something disturbing, but I think it's important that we know what she accused.
It's a really disturbing, and then again, like, it can sound absurd, like, oh no, there's no way that Donald Trump could have done that, right? It's like, well,
I just wanted to warn people.
yeah,
So anyone who wants to mute it for 30 seconds. Just it's very graphic. It's very disturbing. All right, here we go. The Jane Doe stated Epstein introduced her to Trump, who subsequently forced her head down to his exposed penis, which she subsequently bit. The presentation says, FBI presentation. In response, Trump punched her in the head and kicked her out. The victim would have been approximately 13 to 15 years old when this occurred, according to the presentation. The alleged assault took place in the early to mid 80s, and the same woman also claimed to be an Epstein victim. The same woman won a settlement with the Epstein Estate in 2021. According to Rogers' fantastic reporting, the FBI last summer included this in a detailed slideshow presentation.
yeah. And it's a very serious slideshow presentation. And the other claims on this slide, by the way, on that, which I crop out and share and link to, and everyone can see this. I'm not like, people are like, is this real? Is this true? It's like, yeah, it's just all in the files. I didn't get any special, like, help or sourcing or anything with that. Like, you can just put it together in the files. So the slideshow has other claims against other
Yeah,
prominent
we'll get to that. But
public
can I
figures.
ask you a quick question about the
Oh
slide?
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
If the DOJ, right, FBI, DOJ, if the FBI and the DOJ was aware of this, how come there was no follow-up, Roger?
Well, we don't know if there was no follow-up. I mean, I've got a lot of questions about that. I don't like, again, I put this out there as basically a letter to Congress, to people in the press, to other investigators, like, hey, stop saying that he wasn't credibly accused of this, because by the FBI's own judgment, it was credible. Now, again, does that mean chargeable, right? Does that mean I don't even know if the victim or her attorneys may have reached out to Trump. Did they reach out to him? Right? Was there some discussion? Did they come to an understanding? Like, we don't know. And there are plenty of reasons that you can think of that a prosecutor might not be able to bring this case, right? Some of them might be evidentiary. Some of them might be because they actually looked into it and they're like, actually, this one doesn't check out. That's possible, right? Another thing that's possible is that they're like, well, we could, but we would need her to cooperate in the prosecution. And what you have in that 302 is basically her attorney saying, we're only talking about Jeff here, right? Epstein has been arrested at that point. He was alive and in prison on July 24th, 2019, when this interview took place. Okay. And Donald Trump is not arrested and in prison. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. So it is possible. It's speculative. I have no idea. But like, yeah, maybe there's no evidence. There's not enough evidence. Maybe they didn't believe her ultimately, even though she's credible. Maybe they didn't really believe this exact claim happened, or they couldn't corroborate it, but maybe she just didn't want to cooperate in a prosecution against the sitting president of the United States because she was terrified.
The,
That's also possible.
you write
It's also
both.
possible that, who knows, like maybe the Biden, like maybe they sat on it. Like who knows
No,
what happened to
but
it,
it's there. They knew about it. So what's
but
the
it's
question?
there.
Is this a credible accusation against Epstein and the president of the United States? The FBI found it credible. The FBI included it
Yeah.
in a presentation. Like you're right, both the presentation and the email chain were created last summer. Folks, this is recent. Around the time,
They flagged it out of all these files. They pulled this claim, right?
around the time Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche interviewed Glenn Maxwell for you write anachronistic jailhouse proffer, and we've talked
Yeah.
about that proffer, and we've talked about this a lot. Todd Blanche is Donald Trump's personal attorney. Todd Blanche has no business going and talking to Glenn Maxwell. The person who should have talked to her was the prosecutor. The prosecutor was Maureen Comey. What happened the week before? Maureen Comey was fired, of course. So then Todd Blanche leaves DC, goes and talks to Glenn Maxwell for 2 days. And less than a week after that conversation, Glenn Maxwell gets an unprecedented transfer from Florida to Texas, where right now she has a dog, yoga, gets special treatment. To this day, no one knows why she, with her record, got that special transfer and treatment. I mean, we know, but we don't know. And furthermore, Glenn Maxwell, if you all recall, gave a very flowery, very pro Donald Trump, alleged, confession slash a statement, and then just recently, 2 weeks ago, her attorney, when she pled the fifth, her attorney said, "Oh, she's ready to say that Donald Trump did nothing wrong if she gets a commutation." Roger, this to me, I mean,
I'd like to
this is
pull
big.
one thing she said from that
Please.
proffer that's interesting. Like, I believe I don't know what I'm paraphrasing this, but she said that she didn't really think Epstein killed himself, right? Like,
Yes.
that's okay. Well, guess what happened with this interview? The 302 back in 2019. Remember, July 24th, 2019. Epstein is alive. He says the night before, there was the first, they call it a suicide attempt. He claims he was attacked, right? That was the night before the interview, which had been pre-scheduled. This interview is not entered into the case file until August 9th. Now, I spoke with Frank Figluzzi. Yes, I was not aware of what Frank told me yesterday. And this guy's in the FBI for 25 years. And he says, well, when I was there, you have 5 days to write up your interview into what's called a 302 form, right? You have 5 days to do it and file it and enter it into the case system, right? So this was July 24th, and they blew the 5-day deadline. And Frank was like, this is really late, right? Because it was August 9th. So it's like 16 days. That's pretty late. August 9th is the next morning, Epstein's found dead in his cell.
Mm.
The morning after this is entered into so what happened? Why was this late? What can explain that?
So the morning after it was entered, he's dead.
Yeah, and that's just I don't know. I mean, like, I couldn't ignore that. Like, that is fucking weird, man. Like, that's really weird. And then I didn't know that it was, an exceptionally, apparently an exceptionally atypically late entry into the system too. So they took a long time. I don't know what was going on there, And then, her case file, I actually put her case file number in the report, and people can look that up. They can search it, and they can see all the documents that are affiliated with her case. And
Yeah,
if
date of
you're
entry, August
yeah,
9th, 2019. Wow.
yeah. So you can, audience out there, you can enter that number in. You can see for yourself what files are available from this. And if you're going ordinally, right, serially, there appear to be some records missing from this case file. It's also, so her numbers is 3501 President 45. Is that a coincidence? Or are they like, hey, this wink, wink. We have to do something with this special accuser. I don't know. But the 3,500 thing, like, there's a manifest of what's called 3,500 material, and it's material from witnesses, from victims, and on that manifest, the material starts on the DOJ's own manifest. It doesn't start at 3,501. It starts at 3,502. A different person, right? So is this missing from, did they split this off? Did they sever it into like, hey, this stuff is no longer the Epstein files. This goes into a Trump case, right? And if you start thinking about the files that way, if that's possible, that might explain why they can say, yeah, we gave you everything. Because what if they severed stuff off? Like, what if all of like a whole lot of this information that we're not seeing about, powerful men who are clearly really close to this guy in disturbing ways that have unsettling allegations against them in all sorts of ways, right? What if some of those the DOJ, ahead of the discharge petition, severed these off into like different cases? They're like, actually, no, this is it's not Epstein, right? That's a Leon Black file or whatever, right? That could be one explanation for why things are missing that technically might not violate the law. And again, these are all questions that I have that I think are legitimate, 100% legitimate questions that should be answered. I don't have high hopes that we're going to get answers or honest answers
I
from
mean, we
them.
need Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to appear in front of a House committee and to answer questions. We need actually to see the slideshow that was prepared by the FBI. Who prepared the slideshow? What was in the slideshow? Who saw the slideshow? What was done as a follow up? Was this buried? Was this covered up? What's the timeline? These are questions that I would want to be asked and answered, Roger, if I'm an elected official. This
Yeah.
transparency, right? Because if this says if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to lose. That's what I've always said with anyone involved in the Epstein files, and I've said this about Donald Trump. Okay, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to lose. It is in your interest to be transparent, to quash any doubt that the world now has. And instead, it seems that what we've seen for the past year is instead of, oh, I don't know, being transparent, literally, I'm going to quote the president of the United States now, Donald Trump. It's time to move on. It's time to move on, Roger. It's time to move on.
He didn't say my name, but
Yeah, Roger,
ah.
Roger Sullenberger, it's time to move on. Stop it. Stop digging, Roger.
Along these lines, like, can I like interrupt real quick, jump in?
Yeah.
Because my report has two accusations.
That I was
Okay.
about to get there.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. Yeah, because to your point, the other one is I don't want to give it like say it's equal weight because the first one is
They're both terrible.
unspeakably bad direct accusation of assault, right? But the second one is important to what the White House and what Trump have been saying over the past year about the timeline and his relationship with Epstein. Now, Trump over the years has given all sorts of different public statements about his relationship with Epstein. In 2016, Alan Garten, who's one of his lawyers at the Trump organization, told Fox News in a report about Jeff Epstein and Bill Clinton, like he's quoted on the record saying Trump had nothing to do with Jeff Epstein, like at all. Like that's a complete lie, and everyone knew it was a lie. But he said that, and it was in the middle of the 2016 campaign that this came out. Right now, the White House's line that they have just driven straight into the fucking ground for months is kick Jeff Epstein out of his club for being a creep. Right. In the mid 2000s, when he found out about this stuff, whatever, he kicked him out for being a creep. Well, what we have here in this presentation is an accusation that is, again, from a credible person. I'll get to her credibility in a bit, but the accusation is Jeff Epstein introduced this girl at the time, 14 years old, to Donald Trump, saying, this is a good one, right? Now, if you search that in the files, you'll see like there is a typo on this slide deck. This says it's 1984, but like that doesn't match, like literally nothing in the files matches that at all. But there's the exact same claim is actually 1994.
That makes sense.
Right? It's the same, it's like, this is a good one, right? This took place at Mar-a-Lago, at his club. So like, okay, did you kick him out for being a creep then? You know, no, you waited a decade, right, to kick him out for being a creep when he was introducing you to this 14-year-old girl in 1994. Now, the now woman who makes this claim, she is like the DOJ is legally obligated to say that she's credible because they used her as a key witness to testify at trial against Ghislaine Maxwell. And she
Mhm.
helped the DOJ lock up Ghislaine. Now, if the DOJ comes out and says, "Oh yeah, she's not credible," I mean, if I'm Ghislaine's attorneys, right? Like, oh, well, let me file an appeal. Like, you used somebody that the DOJ says
The
is not
FBI
credible as a
deliberately
key
used an
witness against me,
incredible
and you
witness.
knew she wasn't credible against me? No, they're obligated to. That's how credible they found her story. And it did. The jury believed it, right? Ghislaine got convicted, thanks in part to this woman who was one of 4 witnesses to testify against Ghislaine. This woman also happens to say in her notes with the FBI, in her interviews, she says this in a lawsuit that she also files against the Epstein estate and also wins. She makes this claim there too. At Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump, this is a good one, right? Trump agrees. Okay, so that's a credible claim, and that contradicts everything that Trump and the White House have been trying desperately to get people to pretend to believe, for the past year, whatever.
It's my pause is uh not that I'm in a loss of words. I'm rarely at a loss of words. It just disgust that this happened, and what we're witnessing clearly, and I've been saying it since the summer, is a cover up. Just looking at the evidence of my eyes and ears, Roger. I want to remind everyone that the Wall Street Journal, that flaming leftist rag, the Wall Street Journal, last year said that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, last April informed Donald Trump that he's all up in the files. And then when he was asked about it publicly, I believe it was CBS News at the time or ABC News, he lied. We've also seen what happened with Ghislaine Maxwell. We've also seen what's happened with the drip, drip, drip of the files, and now they're saying they're not going to release anymore. We've also seen the reporting. Allison Gill's done the reporting where the FBI, around this time in the spring, folks, last year, they were asked, and this never happens. The unit said you cannot leave for 24 to 48 hours, and they had to go through the Epstein files. They did not go through the Epstein files to investigate and to bring justice for the girls. Oh no, their single job was to find and flag Donald Trump's name and scrub it. And they were all, according to Allison's reporting, based on a tip, anonymous tip. They were all using the same accessible Excel sheet, which means some of those FBI agents have access to some of this information. And they saw things that deeply disturbed them. And now we know, thanks to Roger's fantastic reporting, for those who are joining us a bit late, the 1,500 people, I'm talking to Roger Sollenberger, formerly of the Daily Beast, award-winning investigative reporter, who, from the Epstein files, folks, he found it. It's all there. You could go see it for yourself. He found a very credible allegation by a then 13 to 15-year-old girl accusing Donald Trump of sexual battery. This woman also accused Epstein. In 2021, folks, the Epstein estate settled with her. We know that the FBI flagged her case, flagged her story, and presented it within the DOJ in a presentation. This presentation and a slideshow. So if you look at the evidence before you, not only is she credible, but the Epstein estate found her, well, we assume credible enough that they settled with her. And the FBI did a slideshow presentation, and the FBI itself, not 2021, not 2019, 2025, right, Roger? Just less than a year ago. Uh, so what we're witnessing now is a young girl, now a woman, who is credibly accusing the president of the United States of raping her. And the Epstein estate settled with her in 2021. And the pattern of these two cases or these two allegations, or rather, I should say this one in particular, is consistent with other allegations, we should say. Now, that's not proof, but the stories keep adding up, Roger, of Donald Trump's alleged behavior of violence.
Could I like leap in real quick here with
You can leap
something?
in anything anytime you
Yeah.
want.
So I do want to make this point because it's a question I've always had, and I don't see it really asked a lot. But Donald Trump, Donald Trump stole thousands and thousands of pages of sensitive government records, classified, some of it, not all of it, some of it national defense, right? We know this. He kept them. He didn't give them back. He only gave a few back. Then he lied, had his lawyers lie for him, right? In the Jack Smith investigation. That case ended up getting squashed. Eileen Cannon running interference for Trump, kept pushing this thing back. He gets elected, and then she effectively kills the case. Smith drops the prosecution because you can't charge a sitting president. Thank you so much, OLC, right? But in February, at the end of February, on February 28th, the morning of February 28th, I believe, Donald Trump gets his documents back, right? Because the case is gone. So they're like, well, these are yours. And they return the documents to him. On the day before, Pam Bondi goes on Fox News, and she makes this big to-do about suddenly being surprised, like, I've asked for all the Epstein records, and now I've got thousands of pages. The FBI is telling me there's thousands of pages here of material that they never told me about before, and they just told me about it now. Who knows why? And she's puts on this big show of being angry about this, and it's very conspiratorial the way she pictures it, right? This is the same time that she had just given the first Epstein files to all those right-wing influencers and, humiliated some of them, and they've turned their back on her at that point. But at the same time, she says, like, hey, there's this big thing, like, oh, big cover-up. Who knows? They were Biden DOJ was maybe hiding these things. I don't know. But she says, I'm ordering Kash Patel. She writes a letter to Kash Patel. Again, it's all public. You guys go read it. Says, hey, Kash, you were just as surprised as I was to learn about these documents. I want you to go investigate this, and I'm going to 2 weeks. I want a report back. And she goes out and she's like a big, PR blitz about this thing. What happened to that report? The next morning, they give Trump the documents back. All right. And we don't know if they gave him all the documents. He was asked directly. The Washington Post reporting on this is actually great because they're like, at least some of the documents, because they asked the White House for comment and they asked them specifically about this, and they dodged that question.
Right.
Whether, and, who knows, like, some of this really sensitive national security stuff, I imagine he was convinced by his own people to be like, hey, that's important. We should probably have that. No offense, Don. You don't need that stuff. But what if he took Epstein stuff? Why would we assume that he wouldn't take it? Donald Trump, like, look what he took. Why wouldn't he take that?
Well,
Right?
and a good reminder, folks, because I know that we're dealing with so much. Same man who took confidential information from the White House and stored it in Mar-a-Lago, and after repeated requests by the FBI, he deliberately lied and/or conveniently forgot he had the secret information, which led to the raid. So, a man with that type of, like you said, behavior and pattern, is it surprising? Is it shocking that he would take this, especially if it implicates him?
The day that Pam makes this big thing and sends this letter, right? The FBI enters evidence in the Epstein file, the Master Epstein Manifest. I mentioned this in my reporting. The Master Epstein Manifest says evidence, it's like acquired on. And then the first 4 pieces of evidence, it's chronologically descending, right, are from last year. And it was February 27th. It was the day that she talks about learning about these new records. That's one, right? And then on March 10th, when that all hands review that you were talking about like, hey, look for Donald Trump's name as reported, right? That review on March 10th, there's 3 more entries in there, right? So is this new evidence in the Epstein case right around that time for some reason? What new evidence did you get? Or is this stuff that you acquired and you already had this master manifest built for your project of the redactions and, combing through whatever? And hey, this is stuff that we found somehow or was returned to us, that we've entered subsequently, right? We had to enter it, at this place up top. It's, seems like it's new to the files. So a huge question there. And I think it's an absolutely legitimate question. And, there's I have a gripe that, things have been about the media here. I've not been willing to take this on in a way that feels um, honest to me, like an honest way, a common sense way, logical way of looking at some of these fact patterns, And who knows? The answers might be exonerating. I have no clue, but like,
I'll give you a little clue.
should
Roger, Lev wanted to ask. Lev wanted to chime in because he had a little bit of. He was listening to you. And he had some background information on some of the stuff you said, and he also wanted to ask you a question.
Hey, buddy.
What's up, Roger? I always have information for Roger. So part of that question that you just asked, let me give you a little bit of what I've actually been reporting on and going more into. So when Bill Barr, that's why 2019 obviously was a very important year. And when Epstein got arrested, part of that whole campaign was to protect Donald Trump. A lot of people, and me and you spoke about this a lot of time, Bill Barr and Trump were not friends. Bill Barr was protecting the institution, trying to protect and everything that was going on. When Bill Barr came into office in, I think, January or February of 2019, the files that were handed to him on his desk was my file with Rudy Giuliani. It was the Epstein file that was going on the investigation, and there was another file. There was three files, two of those that I know of exactly, that Bill Barr was personally being reported to on a daily basis of what was going on. Bill Barr was making sure that, just like what you're reporting in the Epstein, which was incredible reporting about the 9th of August, all of a sudden, a situation happening. Same thing happened in my case, as you remember. All of a sudden, when I got subpoenaed not subpoenaed, but when the whistleblower complaint came out, and Bill Barr was the first one to see and knew that the House Judiciary was going to investigate and subpoena me and Igor to get the information, all of a sudden, there was a rush to indict me, arrest me, make me look to be a Russian spy, and have that whole process. The thing that I'm hearing is that Donald Trump never was aware. Bill Barr never shared with him anything that was in the Epstein files. Donald Trump had no idea what was in the Epstein files. Donald Trump had no access to him. He had little blurts, whatever certain FBI agents like Solomon or others that we had inside that would give him. But Donald Trump never had any clue, and that's why all of this run. And you're 100% right that a lot of some of the stuff that was taken might have even been, I can't confirm, but might have been some of the stuff, because what they realized is when after Bondi went and said, we got all this stuff, and they actually started researching it, looking into it. And when all of the shit started coming out, they started realizing not only Donald Trump's involvement, but everybody else and everything that was coming out. That's when the shit hit the fire. That's when Donald Trump did a 360 and basically said, hold a second, July 6th, get rid of it. And that's when everything happened. So yeah, you're 100%. Donald Trump had no idea until they told him. And that's when the single shift happened, because till then, Barr and others, and the reason they sat on it and everything, that's great questions that need to be answered. But that's one of the things I wanted to say to you. But the other thing is, obviously, I wanted to also bring up the point a little bit about Alexander Smirnoff. If we could talk a little bit about what's going on, that's such a crazy thing that the world doesn't even know about that's happening. Obviously, you were involved in that with me behind the scenes. You knew a little bit about what's happening when there's arrests and now all of a sudden being released. If you don't mind.
Roger, go ahead, man.
Oh yeah, so Smirnoff is notorious now for making this claim about Joe Biden and an alleged bribe, and the Republicans in Congress, James Comer, essentially constructed their impeachment inquiry right around this. This would have been the most explosive claim and the closest that they could get to like nailing Joe Biden for whatever corruption or bribe or influence peddling or whatever, right? This claim was made by Alexander Smirnoff, who's Russian Israeli citizen, been living in the United States for a long time, alleged to be an intelligence source, and the FBI arrested him for lying to them about that claim. Like
They first
that
used
claim.
it, and then they arrested him for it.
Yeah, that claim. Right. So the impeachment inquiry, yeah, it did get, James Comer made it rain. He did get he did get some bracelets on somebody, right? But it was on their source, right? Or the source that underpins like basically the thrust of that whole, really just benighted effort. But yeah, Smirnoff was arrested and he was being held flight risk in Las Vegas, I believe. And
Los Angeles first, they held him. They
yeah,
rearrested him in Los Angeles, yeah.
oh yeah, he's at the airport. But I think he's like
Yeah.
when here they've been holding him in Las
Vegas,
Vegas.
yeah. Oh,
And
no, he was in LA for 6 months. In LA for 6 months. He was in the Twin Towers. And I'll give you the back end of it, but
okay,
go ahead.
fair enough. I mean, yeah, I am
You know, I was
going on
okay.
memory here.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
give you some background, but go ahead.
Yeah, and apparently the reporting from this was in November. This report just came out that in November, that in May, Alexander Smirnoff was quietly released from prison and the reporting is that it was medical leave. I think he has, I'm not sure
His
if
eyes.
it's glaucoma or something, but he
Well,
is, his lawyer says that he's essentially blind. I don't know what he might be back. Do you know about that? I don't know if he's
yeah,
like,
he's not
is
back.
he back in? Do you know?
No. Yeah, I'm gonna give you an update. That's why I wanted you to give a little bit
Yeah,
background
but
on
we
it.
still don't know. I mean, the New Republic article that we talked about yesterday, Lev, is that the
Well,
facility.
Roger gave it to me. Roger's the one that put me on this.
I mean, the facility itself, when they were asked, "Hey, where is this guy?" They're like, "Yeah, we kind of don't know where he is for the last 3 months." And so the
Yeah.
question I have is, where is he? Where'd he go?
Where's Waldo? Where's Waldo? No, that's interesting because Roger, we were talking about, I called Roger yesterday to congratulate him on this great work that he did breaking the story. And he just, sent me this. He said, by the way, did you see this? And sent me that article. And I was like, holy shit. Like, are you kidding me? Because I was intricately involved in that whole scenario, going back to the not only part of the Biden, but a lot of people don't know. I'll give you guys a little bit story time with Lev, a little bit really interesting information that nobody knows, but Roger knows a little bit of it. A lot of it. But basically, when Alexander Smirnoff was arrested and started pushing the lie that he heard that basically that he had information that he heard that Biden took a bribe of $5 million. That was the same time when I was arrested, and Bill Barr was sealing my information and hiding it because in my information, in my documentation, there was text messages between me and the CEO of Burisma asking him that question: did Joe Biden ever give you a bribe? That John Solomon had me ask him, and he responded, "No, there was never a conversation." So there was evidence in my files that would exonerate Biden and exonerate them from whatever Smirnoff was saying. So when Smirnoff came out and I started seeing this, I was just got out of. I was just out of prison. I think it was, Roger, right? I think I
It
don't
wasn't
remember.
long. Yeah, I don't think it
Yeah,
was long.
I
It
was
was
just out of prison or something, and I was still. So I was started.
2024, February
Yeah,
2024, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I started tweeting on, because I just had a Twitter account opened up, and I started tweeting saying this is a lie. This he couldn't have heard that. Look at my files, and lo and behold, I got contacted by the Biden team, and me and Hunter became very close. You guys know the story. We're close today. We actually just spoke a little while ago about this, Roger. About, I mean, he can't believe the shit that's going on, and we were discussing it, but it brought me back to remembering how that thing whole played out, because I remember. So I'll give you a little story. So Alexander Smirnoff's cousin, who was his only source relative here, who was by his side at the time when he was being arrested, she lived in Miami, and everybody was trying to get a hold of her, who she was. And one day I'm sitting next to my wife, and I see her phone go off. I mean, like, you can't make this shit up. Like, Roger knows my life is all crazy like this. I look at her phone, and it's a text message from Smirnoff's cousin to my wife saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. I really need to speak to your husband. Something important." And I asked my wife, like, how do you know her? Well, she goes to me, we grew up in Los Angeles, and that's where Smirnoff was from in LA. They were close. So basically, she reached out because Smirnoff was at that time, they turned on him. Because remember, he was their informant. He was giving them information. He was their golden child. And then all of a sudden, they flipped on him and used him as a scapegoat, basically, to the reason they used him as a scapegoat, they needed to close the investigation. They needed Weiss and all of them to shut it down because it was leading to too many things to open up a can of worms they didn't want to. So they basically arrested him, and he was scared. He was locked up. They held him there for like 6 months. He does have glaucoma, actually, eye condition, but I don't know to what degree. And his only source of family was his cousin, which through me asked for help. And I initially reached out not only to, I'm not going to mention their Congress people that were aware of the situation, but also to the Biden team. And I became an intricate intermediary between Smirnoff, his legal team, the Biden team, and all of this going on. And at some point, I could tell you that we were Smirnoff was at a point where he was going to say something. He was going to say something because there was something very important in his case that disappeared. The tape recordings of his conversations with his handler, the notes with the conversations with his handler, the accusations that were being made that he says he could be up that were being lied, because the accusation that I was feeling from what was being told to me through his cousin and the way the family was saying was that basically his handler kind of told him to say the things that he was saying on that 302 or 1023, whatever that he changed all of a sudden because the way it went through. And if you take a look at the way it went through and it didn't go through normal protocols, and it was started making sense. I started having more conversations with his lawyers and Biden's team, and we were getting to it. They started having discussion until one day, all of a sudden, his lawyer called me up and told me basically, "Listen, Lev, I think Alexander is going to go a different way." And that's when I got a call from one of my friends, and I have lots of sources saying to me, "I think they got to him." I'll never forget that day. I called Hunter Biden. I said, "Hunter, they got to him. He's going to flip." Two hours later, Abby Lowe calls up and says he's not talking to us anymore. Literally, one day later, they announced a plea deal, that he was getting this plea deal. And now here we are. And after you sent me that, Roger, I made some phone calls. So now I'm hearing that there's real conversation about Trump pardoning him and bringing him back into the light and trying to rehash. And because Trump is obsessed with pushing that whole thing, proving the point that the Bidens were corrupt. And there's a lot of pushback on it. But there's right now, that's what I heard after you sent me that article the past day I've been looking into.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that stands out to me all the time about this is like with Trump, like it really is everything old is new again. It's all
Yeah.
these same things. Doesn't seem to have much imagination, right? I mean, and he's like, well, let's just keep doing
Yeah.
that. Let's try and find another way to do that same thing again.
He's trying to kill the pardons, all
And to
that.
that point, like Lev, when you were first pinched, right? You were assigned some friendly attorneys, and
Yeah.
one of them being
Todd Blanche.
Todd Blanche. Yeah.
Wow. It all connects. And you, Roger, you made a good point, which we've said here on the Left Hook is the way I describe it is that Donald Trump is like this aging crooner in a Las Vegas bar who only has the same old hits he can play. And as he gets older, he just goes back to the same old hits, but it doesn't seem to work anymore. Real quick question, Roger. I mean, it's all speculation. Where do you think this guy is?
Smirnoff?
Yeah.
I mean,
He asked me that question.
I have no idea. It's possible. It's possible that he's he had this medical leave or something, and he's back in prison. He might be under home confinement. I mean, yeah, there are those possibilities. I mean, we have no idea. We could probably find out. We could find out if he's
We're gonna find out.
This is not something I've inquired into. By the way, it was a story I flagged for Lev because I was like, oh, did you hear about this? Because I thought he would obviously find that interesting.
Right.
But yeah, I have no idea where he is, and
Lev,
Well,
find us
oh
out. Now
no,
I'm just
fine. No, yeah,
curious.
no. Me and Roger are going to find them now. But not only that, the amazement of it, Roger, and that's why I said, "Wow!" Just think about how, this is a big deal. Just like Roger's reporting, and this is what I was writing in the comment. Just think about what Roger broke yesterday. Should be the biggest news out there. This should be right now breaking 24/7. Pushing pressure, and you don't hear anything about that. Like you turn on any news station, we're on to already a different news cycle. Like, are you kidding me? Same thing here. You got an actually Russian, admitted Russian Israeli spy being convicted of lying to start an impeachment of the president of the United States, and literally disappears for months. I mean, just if you think about the fact that the way it's that nobody even knew where he was for 3 months, we still don't know where he is, and all of a sudden, I mean, that's what I'm saying to you. Yeah, we're gonna definitely go get to the bottom of it. We're gonna find where he is, and we're gonna try to find out what's going on. I'm gonna help
Yeah, it's
Roger.
just to be clear, like we don't know if he's disappeared. I mean, he still
Yeah,
might
we
be
have
in
no idea.
custody, and if those talks are serious, right? Like if what you're saying about a potential pardon or whatever, if that's serious, then he would be smart to just be by the book and at home confinement, not just like, hey, I'm on my best behavior. Like that's entirely possible, inconsistent with what you're saying about if
Yeah.
there is like a discussion of some sort of commutation or whatever.
Well, I'm
Right.
curious, and that's why I wanted to tell you. I'm curious, now for you to dig into it a little bit, see what you hear, because that's the beauty of it. You got your own sources, so we'll
Maybe
see
he's
what
at
you
home.
hear.
If he's at home, which home? Is he in Israel? Is he at home? Is he facility?
Watch. I
Is
was
he in
like,
a
"Where's home?
hospital?
Is
Like,
Russia? I mean, where's
well,
home? Is
I
Russia
mean,
home?"
seriously, no, in all
I mean,
seriousness,
nowadays.
I'm just curious, like, where could
Yeah,
And I think
he got the luxury 737 deportment
ah,
treatment.
yes,
what
He
what
as
got
we should
the
do.
the high profile deportment
well,
Roger,
treatment.
well,
to wrap it up, fantastic reporting. I remember going off of Lev's point, I was looking at your tweets. And Roger, I think there was a plea in one of your tweets. Hey guys, I think you almost did like a hey everyone. I think this is a big story. And then I read it. I read your Substack piece, and I was like, this is a huge story.
huge story.
For the 2,100 people who have tuned in, thank you. I'm talking to Roger Sollenberger. He's a investigative reporter, formerly with the Daily Beast, and through the Epstein files, folks. In the Epstein files, he found a credible a credible accusation against the president of the United States, Donald Trump, which the FBI found credible, and the FBI conducted. How many slideshows? How many slides were in that slideshow, Roger?
It's a 21 slide deck. It was created last summer. It was internal from the FBI Child Sex Trafficking
Wow.
Task Force and joint with FBI Violent Crimes Task Force. They were preparing this thing around the time that Todd Blanche was having his proffer with Ghislaine last summer, that interview, right? And again, this is an obviously credible accusation of Trump sexually assaulting a child. She was 13 to 15 years old. They included it in this presentation, not as an insane, not this is not like insane claims about Donald Trump or whatever. This is prominent names, and it has a whole list of claims on it. They cite her directly. The FBI spoke with this person, had a lot of back and forth between this person's attorneys. She lawyered up, right? She sued the Epstein estate. She got a
One.
settlement. Reportedly, as that lawsuit's been reported, she got a settlement from the Epstein estate. The claims about Epstein and the claims about Trump were around the same time. She says in the lawsuit that Epstein took her from South Carolina up to New York City, where she met with wealthy individuals and intimate gatherings, I believe is the phrase from her lawsuit. And this is a super like, is it true? I don't know if it's true. I'm not trying to make the case that we should believe the accusation. I'm trying to make the case that the FBI found this person to be credible, and that does not mean that an offense is chargeable, right? That does not mean that she would have cooperated in any investigation to Trump. In fact, in the interview she gave the FBI, her attorney says that she has fears of retaliation from public figures, and she only wanted to talk about Epstein clearly in this interview. So the question is, why did the FBI find this credible? Why did they, put it in this presentation? They flagged it internally, right, this summer. What do you make of this? Why and how does this make any sense with what Bondi, Cash, Blanche, the White House, Donald Trump himself, all of his enablers, all of his defenders who are just pretending and trying to get everybody else to pretend to believe. To pretend to believe. That's what they're doing. To get them to pretend to believe that Donald Trump had nothing to do, no knowledge with any of this, right? That he was just a good soldier and then he was just a
You,
fun guy. And
so,
then he's a creep and kicked him out of his club.
you know the crazy
Completely
part?
inconsistent.
You
Wait,
know the
I
crazy part?
I gotta bounce. Well, go ahead, Lev, real quick, because
Just
I gotta
quickly, yeah,
invite
quick.
Virginia in a minute.
I'm sorry, yeah, just quickly. The crazy part is the MO. It's the same. This is
That's
not
right.
the first one. This is the second credible witness, not witness, I mean credible complaint, because you also have Katie Johnson, also a 13 to something year girl, also filed a complaint with the credible attorneys, also is similar 13-year-old having Donald Trump wanting her to do oral stuff. Also, complaining
This
that.
claim is not Katie Johnson. I need to be clear
No, no,
that
I know.
this
No,
is
I'm not saying
just
no,
for the
no, no. That
audience,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because people are
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
speculating. They
No, no,
speculate
no.
that it's
I'm
not
the
Katie
opposite.
Johnson.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the opposite. I'm saying to you, this is the opposite. This is another credible 13 to 15-year-old girl that is claiming that Donald Trump or Epstein has raped her. That's what I want to say.
Yeah,
Absolutely. This is not. This
it's
is
the same pattern.
MO.
It's the
Same
same
pattern.
MO and
Exactly.
allegations, the same type of again and again and again. And also, Roger, to put a pin on it, can you tell us about the dates, the coincidence of the dates?
Oh yeah, so the interview with the FBI, according to my reporting, you can look this up. It's all linked there. That gave an interview after back and forth with the attorneys. They set it up for July 24th, 2019. That's the date on the form, says that's when it happened. And then after 16 days, they enter this write-up of the interview called a 302 into the system. That's the date on the file. It says August 9th, 2019. Now, Frank Figluzzi told me that FBI agents typically have 5 days to file these things. So they blew that by, looks like, about 11 days, right? And the next morning, after this is entered into the case file, right, into the case management system, Epstein is found dead in his jail cell the
Hmm.
next morning.
The timing. Oh,
It's just wild. I mean, even if it's not related, I mean, it is fucking wild.
it's yeah. That the second that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is credibly implicated, and there is an accuser, and it's filed. The next day, Epstein is found dead in his jail cell. Roger, fantastic reporting, sir. Roger Sollenberger, investigative reporter. First time he's been on the Left Hook. I hope it wasn't too painful, Roger. And you can come back. Shamelessly promote yourself, sir.
Oh, just read my stuff on my Substack. I've got a report about Corey Mills that took me 10 months to do, and it's
Wow.
insane. It is insane. There's I think 3 different or 4 different stories about that. Go read those. They're crazy.
And Lev, shamelessly promote yourself.
Folks, Love remembers, definitely go follow Roger. Doesn't do a good job. You gotta go follow Roger. He does incredible reporting, incredible independent journalist. Welcome him here to Substack. Give him a follow Substack, and definitely, if you can, he has a small child, so all the paid subscribers helps. Believe me. So,
No
folks,
paid. No paid.
no paid. Wow, no
Roger,
paid. Wow, all
this
free. Look at that, all free. So
Roger,
make sure and
this is,
subscribe.
you're a terrible capitalist like me. This is the Left Hook. There's no paywalls. So at the very least, go and subscribe to Roger. It's the least you can do. It's fantastic reporting. I've linked to his fantastic investigative report where, folks, he found in the Epstein files. It's all there. It's all there. He found it. He screenshotted it. He connected the dots. There are questions that need to be answered, and this is a story that should be headline news. There is a young, well, there is a woman who has credibly accused, according to the FBI, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, of sexual assault. I don't know. Think it's kind of a big deal that the fact. Well, if you don't think it's a big deal, guess what? The FBI thought it was a big deal, and they even made a presentation about it in 2025. Thank you, Roger. Folks, I have Virginia up in a second. Thank you, Lev. Thanks,
Take care,
Roger.
guys.
Thanks a lot, Rajat. I had a
Take
great
care,
time.
guys.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Virginia Heffernan, guys. Virginia's fantastic. Stick around for this. Virginia wrote a fantastic piece about in the Verve. I'm going to actually send it. Give me 1 second. Let me bring in Virginia. She's been waiting for 2 minutes. Thank you, Virginia. Oh, well, you got two. I see the one that Virginia's using. Here we go. All right. So Virginia wrote a fantastic piece that just came out in the Nerve. The nerve.news. It's the Billionaire's Eugenics Project, how Epstein infiltrated Harvard, muzzled the humanities, and preached master race science. Yes, it sounds insane. It is not. Edge, which was Epstein's favorite intellectual salon, was sold to her as a gathering of the world's finest minds. Virginia was invited, and then she realized, hey, Virginia, you're here. And Virginia
Hey.
realized, oh my God, these people are psychopaths, but these people are scientists, Virginia. They're intellectuals. I've been following them for a while, Virginia. And oh my God, they were feted and they were welcomed in TED Talks. And Virginia, I have to say something real quick, if I may be petty for a second, and then I will give you a very nice introduction, the one that you deserve. Um, Many of these individuals, I've been following them and following their writings for several years, and I've been trying to call them out because I sense a little bit of Islamophobia in there, a little bit of a racism in there, a little bit of misogyny in there, anti-diversity. But these people were nonetheless feted, elevated, Harvard, MIT, and Virginia. It seems that these people were just so close to Jeffrey Epstein, who promoted a eugenics worldview, and you stumbled upon this disgusting, incestuous cabal. You were there with the best of intentions. So, Virginia, welcome. Can you please shamelessly, and I really mean this, shamelessly
Yeah.
promote yourself first and foremost?
Okay, thank you. Wash, it's so good to see you again. I have have a column in the New Republic now. It's just about every week, and it's on politics. It's been great to write for the New Republic, one of the oldest liberal magazines of opinion in the U.S., started in part by Teddy Roosevelt. So it's holding the line for liberalism. Lots of people think the magazine lost its way for a while and got into a very hawkish kind of pro-Iraq war position for a long time. It is back with Michael Tomasky. Anyway,
Fantastic reporting. Yeah, great call.
it's been really good, the New Republic. So that's that column, and then I also have a Substack, like everyone, called Magic and Loss, named for my book. I started it at the beginning of the Biden presidency about tech, and then, of course, it morphed back into tech and politics. I had a podcast called Trumpcast during the first term. I was determined to go back to writing about tech, my first love. And then I, like everything, we got sucked back in, like freaking Michael Corleone, to write about Trump again.
Now they pull me back in.
People, every time I try to get out. That's right. And I mean, that's true for the country too, right? Like, we almost think we've slipped the knot of these people, and then they're back.
The timing of this was just exquisite because on the Left Hook, Virginia, what we've been trying to do is I've been trying to talk to experts, journalists, investigative journalists, people who are far smarter than me, who've been uncovering the many threads of the Epstein class, as Ro Khanna has called it, right? This incestuous web, because it isn't just Russia, it isn't just Israel, it isn't just Ehud Barak, it isn't just Donald Trump, it isn't just celebrities. It's also academia. It's also financial institutions. It's the creme de la creme of the 1%, the elite class. And, following up in the Epstein files, the latest batch, what I've been really intrigued by is his worldview. And it seems that Epstein's worldview, as articulated in the files, right, is shared now by the Peter Thiels and the Broligarchy.
Mhm.
This type of post-World War II deliberate disruption of the natural order. They want chaos, and then they want to birth something new in that chaos, a type of techno-fascist utopia where they will emerge as kings without any accountability and any regulation, and tied to that very explicitly, and I know it sounds batshit crazy, but we've been talking about on the Left Hook for a while, is this eugenics type of idea, this Nazi race science. And people are like, no, Waj, it's crazy. I'm like, just literally listen to them. They're telling you the plot. And then you wrote this piece, which I think is fantastic. Again, the Billionaire's Eugenics Project, how Epstein infiltrated Harvard, muzzled the humanities, and preached master race science. And you, in addition to fantastic journalism, you actually have a bird's eye, actually, I want to say a bird's eye view. You have a front row seat to this. Can you talk to us about how you kind of entered into this space vis-a-vis John Brockman?
Yes, I can. So, like every person who joins a cult, I like to, of course, it's in my interest to say anyone could have fallen for this. But I do think it's really interesting to start with the fact that, among other things, you and I met through a speaking agent, right?
Sure.
And that speaking agent, David Lavin, was introduced to me by John Brockman. So, any of us trying to make money selling ideas had to participate in a system, a publishing system, an agenting system, a speaking system. And at a certain time in history, recent history, a certain kind of book, so think Sapiens or a book by Richard Dawkins or a book by Malcolm Gladwell, was suddenly on the front tables when there was a Barnes & Noble on the front page of Amazon, was making enormous amounts of money, like banker money. And that wasn't the case when we were in college. The idea in college was that we would maybe go to a university. I did a PhD, maybe go to a university, get a job, $60,000 a year, a pension, have the excitement of the world of ideas. Or maybe you'd write for the New Yorker, ideally, right? On a contract that would make it possible if your spouse also worked to maybe live in the outer boroughs of New York. All of a sudden, people around us were getting these speaking gigs, which were really weird, a really weird thing. And they were selling books or they were going to TED, and they were adjacent to startups like entrepreneurism, which wasn't really something that people of letters and ideas were close to. There was sort of a little bit of a wall. And it also seemed clear that most books that were selling like crazy had science in the title or were about neuroscience. They weren't about politics. They weren't about, these really interesting fields of post-colonial studies, gender studies, queer studies that generated such interesting ideas in the 90s. And all of a sudden, the big books that were selling were like The Tipping Point, How to Make Your Business More Marketable.
Right. That's
you
right.
know and so Edward Said is writing in the 1990s, and if any of your listeners have ever thought about the global south or post-colonialism, or even just the way it trickles down into thinking about extractive economics and capitalist economics, they're under the influence of Edward Said. They're not under the influence of Malcolm Gladwell, but they fell off shelves, right? We weren't reading those books anymore.
Why talk
So
about, decolonization and Orientalism and pro-Palestinian resistance when you can talk about pseudoscience that makes you more productive and makes
that's
you
it.
more superior and makes you faster and think
Yep.
better and slower?
Yes, I lump those books, which used to be self-help books and now are like business sales manuals, and were now suddenly the height of the Harvard Business Review journal was publishing all this stuff. I lump them into You Can Never Be Too Rich or Too Thin, because they're either diet longevity, Peter Attia kind of books, Deepak Chopra books about health and slimness and attractiveness, or they are books about getting rich. And these were the books of charlatans in American history. The 20th century is littered with bad diet books, many of them analyzed on that great podcast Maintenance Phase, and then bad get rich quick scheme books that were laughable, right? You would never write one of those if you were a Harvard professor. But all of a sudden, there was this huge incentive, gold rush, to write books like that and then speak for $150,000 an hour to a Citibank corporate weekend or $500,000 an hour. You probably heard people were getting enormous speakers' fees. And the
Virginia,
speakers,
if I may, because folks, just bear with us. Virginia's doing a
yes,
really good connect the dots. Just trust me. And if you don't know how this works, and if I may, just for a second, the way it works,
please.
I've been noticing this also for the past, 15 years, right? So you see these nerds. I'm just going to be blunt. These nerds who would otherwise never be invited. And if they would be invited, they'd be invited back in the day when you and I were in college, right? They'd be come to some college places, right? But that's what happens. The entire ecosystem says, hey, you have the veneer of academic, intellectual. You have Harvard behind you, you have MIT behind you, you have Yale behind you, you have a PhD behind you. Okay, why don't you take these ideas, synthesize it, and tell us how to basically feel better, be better, get better, live longer, make more money, the self-help book. But you're not just a self-help coach. You have the sheen, the veneer of intellectualism behind you. But check it out. Write this book and then connect with Simon and Schuster, and you'll get a six-figure salary, because it won't just be a nerdy academic book. It'll be self-help book. Not only that, Then we're going to connect you to a speaking agency. I actually like my speaking agency, but Lavin does this. Big idea stuff, right? And then you're going to get paid 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, not just for universities, but you're going to go to Silicon Valley and corporate America and teach them to be much more, fast and stronger and smarter. And then guess what? You're going to go to TED and Aspen Ideas Festival. And it's giving an incestuous circle of the same types of people, right? And they're going to promote these ideas and you're going to mainstream it and you're going to make a lot of money. Hell, you might even get into the Republican or Democratic administration.
That's absolutely, absolutely it. And, younger listeners or listeners less involved in academia will know this group, the Edge group, what I consider now edgelords, as the intellectual dark web, right? They landed at some point, and these are the people that have washed up at Free Press, CBS News, and how are they connected to Epstein? So let me go back to what Edge is. John Brock, the way David Lavin was our speaking agent, John Brockman was known as a tech agent that got an agent for tech writers who got huge book deals for people and connected to them to extraordinary gigs at TED, Davos, right? Like the apex, and internationally, and he knew Europeans and all this stuff. You look at his list of clients and the list of clients. So the way a MAGA person might have been seduced by Mike Lindell or Donald Trump himself or Don Jr. found these people sexy and interesting. Just to be neutral about it, I looked at the list and saw Steven Pinker. I looked at the list and saw Ian McEwan, Marina Abramovich. I looked at the list and saw people that I had idolized in my youth and got stars in my eyes. And when I knew that John Brockman was the one making these sales, people on his list had the word Booker after their name or the word Nobel after their name, Frank Wilczek, Murray Gell-Mann. I was like, I want to be part of that. Now, I called Brockman and he took me in. And soon, initially on the first day, said, yes, I'm a literary agent, but I'm more than that. I also have a salon of speakers who trade ideas with each other. Sorry, a salon of intellectuals who trade ideas with each other. Now you are among them. And sometimes he would call us scientists. I have a PhD in English, no background in science. A lot of the people do pseudoscience, or they have MAs, or they've started companies and dropped out of college, like Mark Zuckerberg. And all of us come together to give each other a lot of money and pat each other on the back about our amazing ideas. And not only that, we fly on private planes that have literally mink and sable throws. So these are like fur blankets on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. He did not say Jeffrey Epstein. He just made it sound like in our infinite galaxy brainness, we suddenly deserved all these things. And I was living in the same shabby small apartment I live in now, recently a single mom with 2 kids. And I just thought, don't mind if I do. Maybe if this is what all the tech writers are doing, I have the credentials to do this. I'm at the New York Times. I have all this other stuff. Of course, I'm going to sign with him. The reason that I emphasize how natural my transition to it was is that we hear from a lot of people, including Lev Parnas, including Michael Cohen, including the victims, including Olivia Troy, people who were like close to the Trump administration or who rolled with the demi-monde like Lev Parnas, like the side people around Trump, and who turn into whistleblowers. And we think a lot, oh, I would never have fallen for that. But if this Epstein class was exerting the kind of pressure on the culture that we know it did, and some people call it the Trump Epstein class, right? Then all of us were complicit in it at every level. So let's just say if you shopped at Abercrombie and Fitch and you shopped at Victoria's Secret and you noticed that they sell thongs to 11-year-olds at Victoria's Secret, and out of the corner of your eye, you thought, that's a little weird. Or let's say you read books by Sam Harris and they were all about atheism and they sounded really neuroscientific, but you were like Waj and you thought, you know what? He doesn't believe in God, but a lot sounds like he hates Muslims. And if you felt a creepy feeling that the atheists that were gunning for the Muslims, you had that same icky feeling that a girl in the mall felt, where she was like, do I really have to look like that Victoria's Secret person? It's like, I think there's something creepy going way culture normally works. And I'm sure, Wash, many people told you, no, he's just an atheist and Islam has this belief in blah, it, and you were like, sounds a little racist. And they were back to you, right? Us had. And if you were like, Victoria's Secret, these people look pretty emaciated. They seem pretty unhappy and they're wearing thongs at 11. That doesn't look that great to me. Like maybe you should be more body positive. They would be, what's fat phobia? You feminist idiot. Like you're just being woke and we just want to be together. This happened with Occupy Wall Street saying like, there's something a little wrong with like these mortgages. And there's something a little wrong with like playing us all for suckers in the economy. And they were like, even Obama, go back to bed. Like, this is how it all works. We're bailing out the banks and moving on. All of that up and down, and every listener has this in their own lives. They had a moment where they were like, this doesn't look that fair. Why is that person in my field like doing so much better than I am with a huge house? Oh, their husband has a hedge fund or is in private equity. What are those things? What the fuck is going on here? It's none of the things we grew up to believe, but we've been metabolizing these little errors, these little discontinuities for a long time. I feel great relief seeing the Epstein files because I feel like the Epstein files explain that we were right. You were right that it was Islamophobic. You were right that the intellectual dark web was not just asking questions about like maybe Muslims are more violent by nature, right? And you said back, or one said back, let's say I'll take women. Maybe women don't actually suffer ill effects from sexual assault. That was a big point of Steven Pinker's,
Wow.
right? Or maybe homosexuality is a virus. That was something literally that they proposed at Edge. And I would say, this sounds kind of homophobic. And they'd be like, well, you're just afraid of dangerous, exciting ideas. You can't speak the truth. Exactly like the intellectual dark web, Barry Weiss, and on and on. So I signed with Brockman. I joined up with Edge. Edge, to just spoiler, was entirely funded by Jeffrey Epstein. It was a project to promote radical and dangerous ideas, all of which were surprisingly reactionary, conservative, and ultimately eugenics and rape apologetics. This is the stuff that leaked into op-ed columns everywhere. David Brooks, member of Edge, showed those pictures that you see of him in the Epstein files with tech gods are him at Edge events. So a like measured conservative who's just moral and whatever, and maybe liked the Iraq War a little too much, that guy is also sitting with people who are pushing it in exactly the direction that the rest of us suspected it was going in, but weren't allowed to say. How many of us have shown up at a conference and looked down the list and been like, oh, these people, they hosted Charles Murray 2 years ago. Oh, well, I did it, like the Saudis had me on a speaking gig and I looked around and was like, I'm not sure I should be here. Like, and why do I need armed protection for a speaking gig I'm doing? I am a random literary critic, like this should not be happening. So all I want to explain is I feel like the biggest percentage of the Epstein files are devoted to communications with financiers. The second one is with academics. So there are many of us who are unraveling, Epstein's role in financialization on the financial crisis and the banks, and people are doing all that due diligence. What I can bring to the table is tell you what he was doing with academia and ideas and how it trickled down to the rest of us.
I fantastic. You were on a roll, as someone said. I think this is why it's so important. And I appreciate your honesty, Virginia, and because many people would be defensive. But I think the way you explain it to us is, for many of us, I've had a foot into it, right? Like TED, I've been invited. The same year I was invited, Sam Harris was there. And Sam Harris and I went back and forth on Twitter because I picked out Sam Harris, Steve Pinker, Dershowitz, all these guys. I've been on top of it for a while, and I was told, Waj, you're just too sensitive. I had, I'll share this with you real quick. In the, because this is such something you would appreciate, people like you and me, how the hell did we get in these circles? In the green room, it was me and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and me telling Joseph Gordon-Levitt why Sam Harris isn't just your friendly atheist, and why so many people feel like behind his veil of intellectualism, there is a very deep-seated racism towards Islamophobia and Arabs and Muslims. And he sat there and he listened to me, kind of nodded his head. But that Joseph Gordon-Levitt was there. That Joseph Gordon-Levitt was very enamored by the Sam Harrises. The Steve Pinker has been invited many times to TED, right? Like several. And I kept telling people, folks, Steve Pinker, I noticed a cruelty there and a meanness towards people of color and women, right? Black people, LGBTQ. And then these same people during BLM and Me Too, these same people were part of the same type of cabal that pushed back against cancel culture, right? It's gone too far. And then Barry Weiss, what did she do? She picked up the mantle to crush cancel culture. Barry Weiss, folks, wait for it, is the head of CBS News. Guess who she just retained despite the entire 2 weeks of just the fury and anger and rage? Peter Attia. She just said yesterday that Dr. Peter Attia, who was mentioned hundreds of times in the Epstein files, the most disgusting emails, she says, no, we're not going to give in to cancel culture. We'll have Peter Attia, who, by the way, was also at Edge, David Sachs, billionaire. Who's the head, who's the czar of AI and crypto for Donald Trump? David Sachs. Who is one of the biggest funders of free press of Barry Weiss? David Sachs. Who's the person who's aligned with Peter Thiel and knows him since Stanford? Who's part of the South African PayPal Broligarchy? Wait for it. David Sachs. I'm just saying this, folks, so that you understand what we're witnessing, especially for the past, I would say 15 years, but especially the past 5 years with culture, with politics, the attack on Black people, immigrants, Muslims, LGBTQ, the attack on wokeness, and furthermore, the promotion of this type of superior white race eugenics. It ties back to the Epstein class. Sorry, Virginia, for my little rant.
Not at all. I think it's great. And I'm a huge fan of David Graeber, the late anarchist, and who coined the idea of we are the 99% from Occupy. And if we are going to remember that everyone listening, and even your aunt who voted for Trump, are the 99%. Someone should put up their hand if they're a billionaire in the comments, and then we'll know that you're not a part of the 99%. But if you're not a billionaire, and I mean, if you have $10 million in the bank, you're not part of this class. So it's that on down. If we're going to understand how we're all together, then we have to understand how we were all immersed and soaking in it. And one of the ways is not just to say, well, we used the platforms, or, we used ChatGPT, or we used PayPal, we used the products that Peter Thiel and Elon Musk produced. It's also to say that these ideas were captivating. Like, if you could just build a culture from scratch, and I keep choosing Victoria's Secret because it's just so graphic and obvious, but would you really say, like, let's put emaciated teenagers and make them aspirational to young women in a company run by, just to connect that dot, but run, of course, by Leslie Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's biggest client. So, and yet another way, a way to simplify this and stop dropping all the names is to say a certain class of people, including not just Democrats, but leftists. So Noam Chomsky, all the parties came together to form an ideology. And that ideology is we, and all these people are white men, we are apex predators, and our natural right is to subjugate the rest of you. That's the ideology. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, as they say. That is it. We are apex predators, and our natural right is to subjugate the rest of you. That is the ideology. That is the book. That's the one-liner. That's the takeaway. Some version of that has been written in the notebooks of Citibank employees who've gone to these TED Talks. And whatever else they try to tell us is not true, is simply not true. Noam Chomsky is I see someone mentioning him, far left. He did all this work on how the elites try to manipulate us. And shocker, he was part of the elites trying to manipulate us. That's okay. He was right that they were trying to manipulate us, but he also was trying to manipulate us, as we learned from the files. Now, what I like about the Epstein files is all the people who are not in them. So, to my horror, I am in them because I'm on the receiving end of emails that had to do with this Edge organization.
Wow.
But you probably are not. Toni Morrison is not. Richard Rorty is not. Edward Said is not. These are the people that Bell Hooks is not. These are the people I admired as intellectuals. And 99% of us, 99+% of us are not in them. And we are the people whose voices, we're all basically Epstein victims, another way to think about it, which is why the Epstein victims who were the first witnesses, who were the first people to call bullshit on this enterprise, who were the first people to say, this looks like a eugenics project. Those of you who have read the files and seen the diary of the girl who's like, this sounds very Nazi-like, and alleges that Epstein, or says to her diary, that Epstein impregnated her to create a master race, right? She was saying that while I was watching TED Talks, And if we had listened to them, of course, we would have seen this whole thing as this nexus of fraud, abuse, and bad ideology that takes lives, that pillages the global South, that rapes girls, explicitly rapes girls. Like, there are no metaphors here anymore, right?
Yep.
You don't have to read Edward Said and understand complicated post-colonial thinking to know that they were raping girls and planning to rape girls. And it's not a gender thing. They were in some serious way pillaging or raping the rest of us too. Taking our money, taking our minds, monopolizing our businesses, monopolizing our attention, sitting at the top posts at Harvard. If you were struggling at the University of Tennessee to get a job teaching Keats and you thought, well, they must just be more qualified as literary critics. No, they were getting money from Jeffrey Epstein. It is still astonishing. They were raping children and in some ways raping, exploiting, subjugating the rest of us.
I just want to connect the dots for the people who are joining us. There's 2,800 people. This is a columnist and writer, Virginia Heffernan, who was part of the Edge Billionaire Club. She wasn't a billionaire, but she was invited because she's a PhD and very smart, and she's written about it, and I'm going to link to it. Real quick, folks. Epstein, from his own files, had a eugenics worldview in which he believed that his superior genetic seed should breed the next generation of humans. I'm not making this up, all right? He was interested in creating a post-World War II order where out of the chaos, people like him could emerge as the leaders. He was invested in far-right groups. He was really enamored by Putin. He started dabbling with crypto to see how he could destabilize current markets and emerge without any accountability or regulations. In the Epstein files, he's talking to people like Peter Thiel, who share his worldview. Peter Thiel said, oh man, it was a real mistake that Black people and women were given the right to vote. That's in the Epstein files that just got released. Steve Bannon, right? Elon Musk. Epstein, in order to promote this eugenics idea, seeded with his money Edge, which was this salon, this intellectual salon of all these brilliant men, mostly men, and of Virginia, and someone else wanted to.
I mean, it's not the only person of color, as far as I can tell. They're not Black conservatives in it, is the great Deepak Chopra, as you know, one of the greatest minds of our time.
Yeah.
Aside from Deepak Chopra, it is all white men. And I would even go further to say it's, as they made clear over and over again, it's men of Ashkenazi descent. And there is an actual pyramid, race pyramid that they have that is associated with Edge that puts Ashkenazi men at the top because they've been selected by their higher IQ since they had to do accounting for a long time. Oh, Virginia, don't ask questions. That's how evolution works. 1,000 years ago, you do some accounting and then suddenly everybody's brain changes and they become that's not what I remember from Darwin, but I'm not the scientist here.
Race science, bros. Nazi race science, eugenic shit. It's like literally.
With Ashkenazis at the top. So if you were an American who either came after the war to the U.S. or maybe fought in the war or were on the understanding that fascism must never happen again, a certain group of people came to the U.S. and decided that social justice was the way to go, that the anti-liberal policies of the Nazis were the thing to oppose. Others of them, and these are the people that turned out in the intellectual dark web, just thought, yes, there is a God to rocks hierarchy, race hierarchy. It's just that we thought that Nazis were at the top. In fact, Ashkenazi Jews are at the top. And the second one is Asians, and then something. Irish, like my thing, is pretty low down here. And of course, Black people are at the bottom. And so they kept the hierarchy. They just put themselves at the top. And yes, Jeffrey Epstein, with his Ashkenazi heritage, was considered himself to be brilliant. It is also worth saying, when we think about whether these guys are evil geniuses, to notice that you're not wrong when you look at the files and say, it's not just he made some typos or was sort of lazy, like Anand says, and trying to be cool by tossing stuff off. This is a fundamentally illiterate person.
Mm.
And the fact of his illiteracy, and there's also in the conversation with Steve Bannon, you may see that he actually says it was a mistake to teach children to write, because people who can write are idiots, unlike him, who's more like Socrates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So every weakness they have, and all you need to do to check his literacy is see, I mean, if this were your child of 10 and they were using strings of commas all in a row, or they were spelling something differently every time, or they were unable to read the long emails he gets, he doesn't respond to the long emails just to like some little bit in them because he doesn't read them. When he quotes, when Bannon says, have you read Paradise Lost? It has this line in it. He says back to him, I saw that in a movie. Like, this is a person who has not read books. But because they were not reading books, they created a different metric of intelligence, because reading books takes time. You have to learn the language. It's tiresome, right? That's like for grinds. But back here, they decided that their SAT scores or their IQ scores were the measure of their intelligence.
Yep.
And that Black people who read and who did well on interviews, who wrote well, were somehow inferior to them because they had invented an obscure test that they could somehow pass. And so Epstein had stipulated that he was not just covering his illiteracy, but turning his illiteracy into a virtue. That was the sign of the breadth of his amazing intelligence. And the same was true for the other Nobel winners and so on.
And how he compared himself to Black people, right, in the Epstein files was, well, if we're in the desert and there's a lion,
the jungle, by the way, he wasn't talking about Muslims.
Yeah, can you tell him what he said about the difference between him and Black people? How he gave Black people
he said,
advantage, even though
they have a different kind of intelligence, and basically like likens them to chimps. Like he's like he does exactly what Trump just did with his trolling of the Obamas. No, it's terrible. He also, after the George Floyd uprising, said, "Look at them acting like animals." But my other point is that Epstein is seeding his DNA. Like, this is a person that honestly I would be deeply concerned about if he were my 10-year-old. Like, not the moral part. I would just be like, he can't read. I don't know what to do. He can't stay in school. And he's like very dim. He's just not a bright person. Like, is he an arrogant asshole? Yes. But I am sure that the lowest mob member, in the Gambino thing is like more literate than he is. And so for a guy like him, and, I'm not saying the other people in Edge were dumb like he is, but with a guy like him who's clinically moronic, that's how I think of him. Like, if moronism was still a category, he would fit it. To decide to seed the world with his DNA, it's bananas. And he did this. I mean, even according to the other people in Edge, he went to them and said, I've got this great idea. I'm going to impregnate 20 women near Los Alamos at the Santa Fe Institute. I don't want to go down another ridiculous pig path in the conspiracy, but Santa Fe Institute, look it up. He seeded it. At my New Mexico compound, I'm going to impregnate 20 women. And then from there on, we're going to have this, like, the new Adam, Jeffrey Epstein at the top and all these wonderful people. The New York Times published this. The New York Times did great reporting on it. But what they were really careful to say over and over again is there's no evidence any of this ever came to fruition. Now there is.
Zoro Ranch, folks, we talked about it yesterday. It broke. Reuters was the first one to break it, that New Mexico authorities are launching the first full investigation into Zoro Ranch, which, wait for it, is the sprawling ranch where Jeffrey Epstein planned to do his eugenics project. And we have some allegations. Ellie Leonard, we talked to her. She's going through a diary of an alleged accuser, where the accuser, teenage girl at the time, wrote about being trapped at one of these places. I think it was the ranch, where not only was she raped, but she also delivered a baby, and the baby was taken from her, right? And we know that at this ranch, it's surrounded by rattlesnakes, very hard to escape. We know there's allegations not just of rape, but also sex trafficking. And there's also some reports, again, unverified, some bodies might be buried around there, right? And now you sit there and you go, what in Virginia, this eugenics talk, this race science, oh, it might not be. Oh, and then Daily Telegraph 2 days ago did this piece. Daily Telegraph, folks, not the flaming leftist site in England, about the Broligarchy, specifically Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin. All these people were part of the intellectual dark web. All these people were part and parcel. And this is why it's important, folks. Epstein brought together these Harvard and MIT scientists, these evolutionary biologists, these brilliant white men, and connected them to all of these Silicon Valley bros in the past 10 years through his Edge salon, his billionaire salon that he funded. So, why is Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and David Sachs and all these people now promoting this type of bunk eugenic science? I wonder, Virginia. I wonder where it all came from.
Yeah. It really does connect the dots. Edge does connect the dots in these super ominous ways. And I think the anti-gaslighting part of the Epstein files should not be overlooked, which is a lot of us are talking about the horror of reading the files, and that is absolutely there. But there should be some feeling, and you can see this sometimes in like younger people processing the files, this feeling that like, I was right. I thought that things were wrong. Like, okay, let's just think of little Wash saying, you know what, Sam Harris, I know he seems cool and he definitely has this great voice and later making meditation apps and he meets with Elon Musk. I know he seems like he's got it all together and he wins every argument. I feel like he's a little racist. And a lot of fanboys probably being like, you're jealous or whatever.
Virginia,
And
you
just,
have mentioned my life. I have been trolled. It wasn't even Little Watch. It was Young Watch openly calling him out and being trolled by his insane fanboys for being a
I mean,
hater.
I've seen this happen to you on Twitter, and I've seen things like this happen to me on Twitter. If anytime someone was like, "Was Me Too overreach," or like, this like Aziz Ansari thing, like we've got to blah blah blah, we've got to re-adjudicate that, instead of thinking that like the original victim of cancel culture is a Harvey Weinstein. Like these are really really damaged and damaging people that belong behind bars, and yet somehow it all like bit the cancel culture people or the women victimized in Gamergate. And we ended up sounding insane and getting trolled within an inch of our lives. So I'm very happy to see some of these stupid edgelords saying the pussy hats were right. You've probably seen that. The most hysterical pussy hats were right, because those of us who didn't vote for Trump because in 1971 he settled a discrimination lawsuit, like because his family wouldn't rent to Black people, just wouldn't rent to Black people. That's what happened. 1970, 71 happened. So a lot of people who were victims of that racist semi-eugenics project said like, no, I'm not voting for Trump. But even if you didn't get the memo in 1971, you heard the Access Hollywood tape. You heard him gunning for the assassination of innocent young Black boys. And you thought, you heard Access Hollywood and you were just like, no, I don't really want someone who rapes people. And time and time again, people blew past those. But it was Black people in 71, and it was women, right before the election that were like, I think I know what I'm seeing here. And I'm seeing that kind of apex predator that I saw in high school. I'm seeing that kind of, like, I know this kind of guy, right? And I'm not as sensitive as you are to Islamophobia, but I'm sure you know this kind of guy who just says religion's responsible for war, or maybe Muhammad, whatever, like all that bullshit. that we sat through on YouTube comments and whatever that you knew was not were these paths not worth going down. You knew you were arguing with an illiterate person who didn't like know anything about this and was trying to say a racist thing. And then they were sliding into the things, the whatever, saying like men with clavicles this and calipers that, and you were like, this is not eugenics. And they said back to you, you're hysterical.
But, Virginia, even to connect it, to drill it down, truly what we're witnessing with the Epstein class is it's so incestuous. All these thoughts, all these ideas that we couldn't really put our finger on, but because you and me were lucky in that we kind of got a side entrance and then I was quickly kicked out. That's what kept happening. They invited me and they kicked me out.
Totally.
An Idea
Me
Festival,
too.
TED Talk,
Yeah.
all these places. And I shared this, and I'll share this with you. I've shared the story twice before. Aspen Ideas Festival, a couple years ago, I was there. Jordan Peterson was in conversation with Barry Weiss. It was Barry Weiss's first invite. And she was moderating this conversation with Jordan Peterson. And going back to exactly what you said, because I can just imagine you sitting not in a fly on the wall, you were invited to these edge clubs, and your spidey sense is saying, I think I'm listening to morons. These are idiots, but they're apparently seen as brilliant people. Maybe I'm missing something. So it was Barry Weiss, Jordan Peterson, right before both of them were about to take off. I'm listening for an hour. He literally sounds like a crazy person. He just doesn't make sense. It's just a lot of big words. It's word salad, but it boils
He
down.
believes dragons exist. Like if this was a stoner in your high school, you would be like, that poor guy. Like, I hope he doesn't live on the street. And
That's exactly it. His thesis, what you just said, his thesis at the end, he finally said it. Paradigms, societies work better with power paradigms. America was better when there was a power paradigm and it was white Christian men on top. That's pretty much it. All right. Right after, for some strange reason, I get invited to sit in their little salon. It's in the hotel lobby. I had a teacher of mine who used to be my UC Berkeley teacher who was friends with him. He goes, oh, come sit with us. So I'm sitting with Barry Weiss and Jordan Peterson because I'm like, I cannot refuse. I see Jordan Peterson. He looks, and I've said this before, and I messaged my friends. He had nothing to contribute. He was completely quiet. He looked physically, spiritually, emotionally unwell. He looked sick. A rich man comes, sits next to us. We just talk to him, and he meets Jordan. He's really happy. And he goes, I love this man. I'm like, oh, why? He goes, oh, I fund him. I'm like, you fund him? Yeah, I bring him around and I meet him. I pay for him, and we do salons all over. And my friends, we listen to him. And he ends up being a billionaire, right? So I said, what is it about Jordan that you like? I love his take on Me Too. Me Too has gone too far. And then you see Barry Weiss with David Sachs, anti-cancel culture. And then I don't know if I shared this with you, but the Harper's letter, right, folks? Remember the Harper letters, the anti-cancel culture letter signed by all these white men, all these guys, they all signed that letter. They approached me to sign it too.
Same.
Yeah. And then I said, no, I'm not going to sign this. I don't think this is cancel culture. I think this is accountability. And I also told them I would strongly recommend you not do this because I think this will backfire. But all the same people, they were really pissed off about BLM. They were really pissed about Me Too. They were really pissed about accountability. And they were really pissed off. Just a few of them got critiqued, Virginia. And then you see politics. Look at Donald Trump. Look at the people, anti-cancel culture, anti-DEI, anti-woke. And then I'm reading your article, and I'm going to flip it over to you. Others in the EDGE circle, including Charles Murray and Robert Kurzban, have long hammered away at what they consider universal constants: the inferiority of the black mind, the predisposition of men to violence and rape. While EDGE man Murray, a proud white supremacist, is still the right's darling of free speech, EDGE man Kurzban resigned his post at the University of Pennsylvania in 2018 after several alleged sexual relationships with undergraduates.
It was incredible to pull the string on any of the people. One of the things that I think is we're sort of seeing with the files is just that fraud, abuse, and bad ideology go together. Like this is one of the cases, and maybe with Aziz Ansari or Louis C.K., you've had to do how can we separate the man from the work, right? How can we separate the fact that Picasso had sex with underage girls, but did maybe beautiful work? You don't have to do that anymore. I just want to liberate you because the man and the work are one and the same here. If you're preaching race science and rape apologetics, if you're preaching both of those, you're also doing those things. Like, that's what the Epstein files show. And, one way that QAnon, suggested some possibilities of correctness, as Mehdi Hassan keeps saying, some of the things they got right in QAnon was the exact same things that many of us were saying about neoliberalism and the shortcomings of neoliberalism, but they just put names and faces to it. They just said, this isn't rape culture, this is rape. And I thought to myself, that's not how these things work. Everything is this the banks working, but these collusions, this power, post-colonialism, because I had mostly done it in a classroom. But they said, like I was someone who'd been critical of the Catholic Church as a system. Then the victims are like, oh, it's not just a vague system that you analyze in school. It is an actual machine for the rape of children, right? And I think we never metabolized that about the Catholic Church. And then we made the same mistake with the Epstein class. I would have told you that Deepak Chopra just has some airy ideas about healing, but maybe there's something good and meditation isn't that bad. Sam Harris, same. And I definitely thought with Charles Murray, listeners may know him as the author of The Bell Curve, which argues that Black people have lower IQs or something than white people. I haven't read it. But I would have stood with the Barry Weiss people and said, he too has a right to speak on our campuses. It's weird that we're always defending a right-winger who has the right to speak on campuses. Surely, David Graeber should be fired from Yale. He should be able to come and preach anarchy. Surely some of the most radical feminists or radical gay activists who were like, let's infect people with HIV to prove this thing exists, surely they should be able to talk too. If you're saying his extreme views are important that we enshrine them on college campuses, let me introduce you to a couple of other extreme views from, feminist separatism or from, there are lots of other extreme views. But the only extreme view we always seem to be defending is the not that extreme view shared by many white men that white men are superior to Black men. So I don't really know why I have to mobilize all my liberalism, all my Enlightenment values, all my belief in free speech to continue to defend reactionary speech that is corrosive and eugenicist. And that is where I stood with a Harper's letter, right? Where I was like, oh, you're defending free speech? Let me guess who your heroes of free speech are.
There you go.
It's going to be Charles Murray. And that's why I didn't sign the Harper's letter. And that's why I block free press wherever it appears, because it is this incredibly bad faith argument that, defends Ashkenazi Jews as the top of the heap, and then tells you you're being anti-Semitic if you say one thing about Israel. Right. And what? Right.
That's
Unless
free,
you
and also just yesterday, what we found out, Stephen Colbert, I don't know if you saw that, CBS told FCC threatened CBS then pulled the plug on Stephen Colbert because Stephen Colbert was interviewing James Tallarico. That happened last night, folks.
This is where we are. And the point, the people are no longer the illiberalism is beginning to encroach or has encroached entirely on our democracy. And the people are no longer consenting to the government they have, the culture they have, the banks they have in any way. They just don't have our buy-in. It's a tinderbox right now, because if you can't turn to the New York Times without the New York Times saying that Epstein was not actually trafficking girls to his friends, the girls were just for him. Or you have the Atlantic saying most of the girls in the files, I don't know if you saw this, but are just looking for sugar daddies.
Yep.
Sugar daddies. They wanted to be sugar babies. These phrases being used by the Atlantic. If you look at those things and feel crazy, and if the only time you feel sane is when you're listening to Waj or you're watching TikTok, these kids that are driven to TikTok or the victims driven to TikTok who are analyzing the files in a way that makes sense, then you're understanding how precarious things are right now. Because networks, CBS is captured. The New York Times is a monopoly with the folding of the Washington Post. So much for a marketplace of ideas. We have one newspaper, and that newspaper is both siding and going after Zoran Mamdani like he's their white whale. And you name it. I worked at the LA Times. The LA Times is captured. I worked at we all know that the Washington Post is captured and then gutted. And these are this is a terrifying situation. And, but the upside is that this still works like a democracy. We have the habit of liberalism, right? We're not like people who have been ground down like Russians by all our media being captured. And we have platforms like Substack, TikTok, YouTube, and we also have this like incredible capacity, like to even when one of them is taken over, like Larry Ellison taking over TikTok and the Saudis, incredible capacity to do samizdat and adapt. So like, you know, samizdat being like the illegal media that comes out under totalitarian regimes, it is, I find it actually so heartening to watch TikTok and have people get around the speech codes, get around find ways to beat the algorithm, and then also just move off to other platforms. And all of us going to Substack. Carol Cadwalader, who published my piece that
fantastic.
we're talking about in The Nerve. Amazing. Then Don Lemon doing his incredible reporting. Like Don Lemon, who was used to having CNN behind him, now is just a one-man band. Joyanne Reed, same one-man band. We got fired largely for sexist and racist reasons. Clearly, right? Harry Weiss. And we I think of it as, the Who's down in Whoville. They're singing without any presence at all. That's how I feel when I look at Substack. They took all our presents, but we're singing without any presence at all. And, as far as I know, and it could change, Substack is owned by private equity. Someday you might tune into this show or my shows and find it shut down, or find us talking like we have a gun at our backs. And when that happens, hopefully we will adapt and acknowledge it. But for now, I have never faced a moment's censorship. And I'm saying things like this. You are saying things like this. We're saying the things that are incredibly destabilizing to the regime. And most of us oppose Donald Trump. Most of us by this stuff. So pay attention to the 1% in the files, but remember that we are the 99%.
That's right. No, that was fantastic, Virginia. And people are saying, please come back. And only if Virginia comes back, invite is open anytime. Her piece, which I linked to, is a fantastic piece. She connects the dots and she talks about, she's not just a journalist here. She was there. She knows these people. She was invited to the Edge Club. It's called the Billionaire's Eugenics Project. How Epstein infiltrated Harvard, muzzled the humanities, and preached master race science. And folks, it isn't just, I don't know, this was back in the day, this is theoretical. No, no, no. He brought together all of the academics who then were met with all the Silicon Valley bros, and now this is being promoted 24/7 on all the social media apps, and this is being seeded all across the world, right? The Epstein idea of eugenics has literally been seeded in academia, in social media, and the Broligarchy. And if you really need to boil it down, I think Virginia said it best. The thesis of it all is they believe they're at the top of the food chain. They are the apex predator gifted by God and nature, and it is their destiny to rule over us. And we should be grateful that they're allowing us to rule over us as our benevolent overlords. And then you look at Peter Thiel and you look at Curtis Yarvin, their entire idea of techno-fascism. That's exactly what it is, that we should be in charge and we will break up the world in many fiefdoms that we will control. And that if we are lucky, we will be the progeny of their seed. Can't make this shit up, folks, because it's real. That's what they are. And if you feel like another important point you made, Regina, I think it's very important, especially the past 7 years, especially with Me Too and BLM. If you feel, you know what, I got a spidey sense. It's the same cabal, the same group of people promoting the same type of shit, which is regressive, anti-woke, anti-diversity, anti-democracy, but I just can't put my finger on it. And it's gross. You are right. You are right. And you are not wrong. They're wrong. You're not stupid. They're stupid. Virginia and I have been in the rooms with these alleged brilliant people. They're dumb. Virginia, you tell them. I literally go back and tell my wife, I was with these brilliant people. I was on a panel. Sarah, I ran circles around them. And then I talked to them in the green room. They're not that smart. I'm not that smart, but they're definitely not that smart. Virginia, you were in the Billionaire's Brilliant Club. You tell the people.
That is exactly right. And I actually find that so moving when you were saying it, because yes, they have these ideas that they're apex predators, but guess what? They're wrong. They're just wrong. Like, it's not interesting what they believe. It's not worth rereading their books and trying to find some truth in it. They're simply wrong, and like, welcome to the first day of the rest of your life of never reading these people again. Like, the syllabus is blank. You can now fill it with whatever Emily Dickinson poem you wanted to read to begin with. You do not have to study their ideas. They're wrong. We were right all along. You are right. Go forth and prosper.
And folks, I will say one thing, because Michelle Obama said this as well. If you've paid attention to her, she's brilliant. She underplays her brilliance, and the people have underestimated her because she's a black girl from the South Side of Chicago. But she said this a couple of times. I've always picked this up in her interviews. She goes, I've been invited to some of these meetings, world leaders, brilliant folks. I'm in the table, and I listen to them. And you sit there and you go, oh, you feel a bit of discomfort. I'm sure you felt that. I felt that sometimes, like, oh, am I allowed? Imposter syndrome. Oh my God, I'm here. I'm the wide-eyed new kid. And then you listen to these allegedly brilliant people, you're like, they're not that smart.
Yes.
Huh. They're
Yes.
not that smart. We're being run by people who are not that bright. And the worst part is not that they're not bright, because you could be kind and not bright. They're
Right.
cruel, they're vicious, they're ugly, they're stupid, and they're wrong. And now we can finally see it. And that's why, this whole Epstein thing with the emails, it's actually a sign of brilliance. No, I read his emails. I think he's an idiot. I think he has terrible spelling and terrible grammar, and he's a moron. And he had the money, and this is the money that was ceded to academics and the Broligarchy. And now that it's exposed, and now that we see the wizards are idiots, maybe, just maybe, we don't have to fear or respect the wizards anymore, Virginia.
It's the best. It is the best. It feels so liberating. It feels you don't have to entertain their arguments for a second. Just like day for a warm bath.
Virginia, can you shamelessly promote yourself, please?
Yes, my Substack is called Magic and Loss. You can find it and my podcast, which is called What Rough Beast. I do it with the brilliant Cy Cantarell. I think you've had her on your show,
Cy,
too.
you do it with Cy? What a small world.
Yes.
Please
We
tell her
are
I said hi.
co-hosting
She's
now.
so smart.
She is, it is difficult to even remotely keep up with her. But for her analysis, systems analysis of how this thing is collapsing, you have to tune in. And I'll be there in awe of her intelligence. It's vpheffernan.com will lead you both to the podcast and to my work for the New Republic and to my Substack. Subscribe, and I will be forever grateful.
Oh, let's have you and Cy on next time.
Oh, great idea. Great idea. Do you know I try to call her Psyops, but she doesn't like it. But I think it's a really good nickname for her.
I said Cyborg, just
right.
to amplify her intelligence. But no, she's been on twice before. She was great. Oh yeah, so we're gonna have Virginia and Cy on again, and Cy doesn't know it, but she'll come on. We'll convince her.
Good.
But thank you so much, Virginia. It's a fantastic piece. For the 3,500 people who are watching us, I just went on, the first was Roger Sollenberger, fantastic investigative reporter, who found in the Epstein files a credible accusation against our president, President Trump. The FBI flagged it as credible, did a presentation last summer, and it was so credible, folks, even though this is not admission of guilt, that the Epstein Estate in 2021 settled with her. So she accused Epstein and Donald Trump, and Roger's like, I think there's a big piece of news. The fact that the FBI did a friggin' presentation. Anyone want to follow up? There's a credible accusation of sexual assault against our president. And then we led into Virginia, who wrote this fantastic piece about how Epstein used his money to seed his eugenics idea in academia and Silicon Valley through the Edge Foundation, which brought together the brilliant minds of a lot of insecure losers who couldn't get dates in high school. Virginia, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to have Jess Craven on. Jess is awesome. Jess is going to come on in 2 minutes. I'm going to sign off and come back. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you.
Bye.